Margaret stood at the tall windows of her corner office, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. At 58, she had built an empire in commercial real estate. But success, she had learned, often came with a price. Her calendar was full, yet her home remained empty. The invitation on her desk caught her eye once more. Her college roommate Sarah was hosting a charity gala at the Riverside Community Center. Margaret had written the check weeks ago, but Sarah had called personally, asking her to attend. "Just come," Sarah had said gently. "You might find it means something." That Saturday evening, Margaret arrived at the community center in her tailored navy suit, her ash-blonde hair pulled back in its usual neat bun. The building was modest, filled with families and volunteers setting up for the event. She felt out of place immediately. Then she saw her. A little girl, perhaps 7 years old, sat in a wheelchair near the punch table. She wore a pink dress with delicate lace trim, and her light brown hair was swept back with a simple clip. In her lap, she clutched a white stuffed bunny, but it was her eyes that stopped Margaret in her tracks. They held a brightness, a curiosity that seemed untouched by whatever challenges life had given her. The child was watching the volunteers practice their dance routine for the evening's performance. Her small hands moved in time with the music, conducting an invisible orchestra. Margaret found herself drawn closer. "Hello," Margaret said softly, approaching the girl. The child looked up, and her face broke into a radiant smile. "Hello, are you here for the party?" "I am. My name is Margaret. What's yours?" "I'm Emma." She held up her bunny. "And this is Mr. Whiskers. He loves parties, but he's a little shy." Margaret surprised herself by kneeling down, her expensive suit forgotten. "It's very nice to meet you both. You seem to enjoy the music." Emma's eyes lit up even more. "Oh, yes. I love dancing. I love watching people dance. See how they move? It's like they're telling stories with their bodies." "That's a beautiful way to describe it," Margaret said, genuinely touched. Emma hesitated, then asked quietly, "Do you know how to dance?" "I used to," Margaret admitted. "It's been many years, though." There was a pause. Emma's fingers traced the armrest of her wheelchair. Then, looking up with those impossibly hopeful eyes, she asked, "Can you teach me to dance?" The question hung in the air between them. Margaret felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been sealed tight for too long. "I would be honored," Margaret heard herself say. Emma's mother, Catherine, approached then. She was a young woman with gentle features and tired eyes. She wore a simple cream-colored blouse and looked uncertain about interrupting. "I'm so sorry if Emma has been bothering you," Catherine began. "Not at all," Margaret said, standing. "Actually, Emma and I were just discussing dance." Catherine's expression softened with understanding and perhaps a touch of sadness. "Emma loves music and dancing. We watch performances together online." "Mom," Emma said excitedly, "Margaret is going to teach me to dance." Catherine looked at Margaret with questioning eyes. "If you'll allow it," Margaret said. "I may be a bit rusty, but I think we can figure something out together." The evening transformed after that. Margaret pushed Emma's wheelchair to a quieter corner of the room where they could hear the music but have space to themselves. She explained to Emma that dancing wasn't just about moving your legs. It was about rhythm, expression, and feeling the music in your heart. "Watch my hands," Margaret said, and she began moving them gracefully to the slow waltz playing. "This is how the music flows. Can you feel it?" Emma nodded, her eyes fixed on Margaret's movements. Then tentatively she began to move her own hands, mirroring the gestures. "Exactly like that," Margaret encouraged. "Now let's add your arms, your shoulders." Dancing is about moving whatever part of you can express what the music makes you feel. For the next hour, they danced. Emma's face glowed with concentration and joy. She swayed her upper body, raised her arms, turned her head with the melody. Margaret found herself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in months. Other people began to notice. The room grew quieter as more people paused to watch. But Emma was lost in the music, her movements becoming more confident, more expressive. When the song ended, the room erupted in applause. Emma looked around, surprised, then beamed with pride. Catherine approached with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered to Margaret. You have no idea what this means to her. To us. Margaret felt her own eyes sting. She's remarkable. You both are. That night could have ended there, a single bright moment. But Margaret found herself thinking about Emma all week. She thought about that child's joy, her determination, her absolute refusal to let limitations define her possibilities. On Wednesday, Margaret called Catherine. "I was wondering," she said, "if Emma might like regular dance lessons. I've been teaching her the wrong way, you see. I should be learning from her." Catherine's voice was thick with emotion. "Are you certain?" "More certain than I've been about anything in years." And so began something neither of them expected. Every Saturday, Margaret would arrive at Catherine's modest apartment in her casual clothes. No more business suits. She and Emma would spend 2 hours exploring movement, music, and expression. Margaret taught Emma about classical dance forms, about the stories behind the music. Emma taught Margaret about joy without condition, about courage, about finding ways to soar regardless of circumstance. Margaret learned about Emma's world. She learned about the accident 2 years ago that had injured Emma's spine, about the surgeries and therapy, about Catherine working 2 jobs to make ends meet while still being present for her daughter. Quietly, without fanfare, Margaret began helping. A trust fund for Emma's medical expenses, a better apartment, a scholarship fund established at the community center for children with disabilities. She did it not for recognition, but because Emma had given her something priceless. She had reminded Margaret what mattered. 6 months later, the community center held another gala. This time, Emma and Margaret performed together. It was a simple piece, choreographed for their unique partnership. Margaret danced around Emma's wheelchair, their movements synchronized, their hands telling a story of friendship and possibility. When it ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. That night, as Margaret helped Emma with her coat, the little girl looked up at her. "You know what?" Emma said. "You're not just teaching me to dance. You're dancing with me. That's different." "That's better." Margaret knelt down one more time. "You're absolutely right. And thank you, Emma, for teaching me the most important dance of all." "What's that?" Emma asked. "The dance of living fully right where you are, with exactly who you are." Emma hugged her tightly. Mr. Whiskers caught between them. As Margaret drove home that night, her house no longer felt quite so empty. She had discovered that the greatest success wasn't measured in buildings or bank accounts. It was measured in moments like these, in connections made, in lives touched, in the simple act of showing up with an open heart. The lonely CEO had learned to dance again, and in teaching a little girl who couldn't walk, Margaret had finally learned how to truly move forward. Sometimes the greatest lessons come from the smallest teachers. Sometimes the dance we need to learn has nothing to do with our feet, and everything to do with our hearts.